Hi, Markku, Wilenius, your traveling futurist. Did you know that fake news spreads as much as 6 times faster than correct factual news? Think about that. As long as there has been media of any kind, there has been also fake news. The media history of this world knows that this is not a new phenomenon. However, we are now living at times where there is more information and more messaging than never before. What means that actually there is a lot of more chance to mediate, to spread some information where the agenda is that it is serving for some other purpose rather than giving any objective facts. So fake news can be something which is deliberately devised as misinformation, but sometimes it can be also something that unintentionally is spread without you knowing that it's actually not correct information. Now, there is a widespread suspicion about the current media today. In the United States, particularly, there is a majority of people that have major doubts about whether the information that they receive is actually correct. So how is it possible that we have come to this type of the point? Because you would think that in the normal circumstances, if they are sort of a trustworthy looking medias, that you would trust that what they deliver is really objective truth. But with the spread of the social media, everything has changed, because now more and more people are finding that they can make more influence, they can make more impact to the world if they are spreading something which just looks outrageous, but it's not really anything to do with the truth. But because they want to have a media attention, they do it. And as I said in the beginning, this is a very attractive trap because the fake news spread faster than the real news. And that's why a lot of different sources are using that. And if you think about the cases like Putin wanted to mold the opinion climate in the US before the 2016 election. Of course, he was using the social media, and not only him, but also many others that wanted to have an impact. And usually the impact is high when you can spread the news that say something negative. And in this case, the negative was Hillary Clinton, but it can be whatever. So what happens in our times that this type of media influencing is rapidly spreading, which means that we need to be much more aware what type of the information we are using. If you want to hear what I think about how we can actually deal with this issue, how we can actually find reliable sources of information, I have this 4-step program to offer for you. The first step is to really go and look at the source. Sometimes it might be difficult, but in most of the cases actually not. You need to look, where does this information actually come from? What are the interests there? Well, if there is an independent news source of some sort, then you could kind of think quite comfortably that, well, maybe the information that they provide can be rather reliable. But only if there is an information from your side that, well, this is also happening in a country where there is not a pressure coming from the government signed to publish certain kind of news. So, which means that we need to be looking at, the level of transparency and the level of independence of the press. And we know that by countries, this is changing quite a lot, the role and the possibilities to be objective among media. So look at the source and try to locate it in such a way that you really can make sure that there are no vested interests behind. The second thing that I find important for you to consider is that academic sources are usually quite reliable, and they are reliable because when it comes to academic journals, books, those type of the publishers, there is a fact-checking behind as a peer review process. So other scientists are looking for that stuff, going through that text before it gets published. That's the usual process in the academic circles. So science is based on observation, empirical results, and then correction to the previous information if there is more to add. And that's why the scientific information by default should be quite reliable. So you should look at sources that are connected to the sources and to this academic kind of world, because that is the world where you cannot spread fake, you cannot spread any kind of information that you can not actually check whether this has a resonance with everything else that has been found in the field of science. The third aspect that you should be looking is that go deep into the motives of those that are giving the information. That do they have some real ideas behind that they have an agenda that they are supporting, and because of that they want to color a little bit of the information, which is typically happening in the situation where there is a, let's say, election, or there is a situation, a war or something like that. So in this kind of a heated venues and circumstances, there is usually a lot of misinformation around, and you should be careful to look which are those sources that are in that kind of debates with a heavy bias, and which are the ones that are just more objectively looking at the situation and event. And the last is that when you are looking at any other source and you have any sort of a doubt that this might not be the correct information, the simple way to deal with that is that you look from some other sources and compare what you find from there, and thereby you are making that kind of a checking that the information is correct. That's not 100% proof, because there can be sometimes be kind of very widespread idea or piece of information that is ultimately wrong, and everybody's just repeating that. So that doesn't disclose, or that means that whatever information you are using checked in with another information might not lead you to the right conclusions. But in most of the cases it actually does. Using those 4 steps, I think you can be quite certain that actually your capacity to differentiate between the real, truthful, and the fake news is much higher than, and we should be using it in our times, because as we move on in this world with a lot of information and social media expanding all the time, we need to become much more careful what type of the information we are picking. That should be a part of the sort of a literacy training in this world, and in the future much more so. Subscribe to my channel and look some other aspects of future and our current challenges.